Welcome to Hopeful Moments 1. Have you ever encountered someone who believes the world revolves around them? Someone who manipulates, controls, and takes advantage of others for personal gain, without ever facing the consequences? These individuals live under the illusion that they are invincible, that no one can see through their tricks and deception. But life doesn't work that way. Today, we will dive into a dramatic story, one where a person who always seemed to come out on top finally receives a long overdue lesson. A relentless counterattack, a perfect comeback from someone they never saw coming. Get ready, because what you're about to witness will keep you on the edge of your seat. Are you prepared for a shocking twist? Story 1, a landlord's kindness taken for granted. OP's father is a kind-hearted and generous man, always willing to help others without expecting anything in return. As a responsible landlord, he prioritizes the well-being of his tenants over profit, ensuring they have a comfortable place to live. One day, a colleague at his workplace, a seemingly decent and polite man, asked to rent his property. The man shared a touching story about his financial struggles and his sick child, who needed a stable home. Moved by his situation, OP's father agreed to rent the place at a low price, even waiving the security deposit because he believed kindness would be met with gratitude. Little did he know, this decision would turn into one of the biggest mistakes of his life. At first, the tenant appeared respectful and thankful for the help. However, within a few months, his true nature started to reveal itself. When rent was due, he always had an excuse: his paycheck hadn't arrived, he had medical expenses for his child, or he was dealing with unexpected hardships. OP's father, being compassionate, gave him extra time instead of pressuring him. But what started as an occasional delay turned into 6 straight months of unpaid rent. OP's father still believed the man would eventually pay, but the reality was far from it. Then, out of nowhere, the tenant announced he was moving out immediately. The reason? He had just purchased a new house. Shocked and furious, OP's father demanded that he settle his outstanding rent before leaving. Instead of showing remorse, the tenant shamelessly blamed the house itself. He claimed that the house had made his child sick, forcing him to buy a new home for the sake of his family's health. A blatant lie. Suspicious of his claims, OP's father inspected the property, and what he found exposed the real truth. The house wasn't the problem. The tenant had turned it into a hotbox for illegal substances. Evidence of marijuana smoking in enclosed spaces was everywhere. The smoke had seeped into the walls, curtains, and furniture, leaving a strong, lingering odor. As it turned out, this man had been deceiving OP's father to live rent-free while recklessly spending money elsewhere, enough to buy a new house. Even worse, his own habits were the real reason his child was constantly unwell, not the house. But OP's father didn't let it slide. Rumors about the tenant's fraudulent behavior and drug use started circulating at work. And karma came knocking faster than expected. The company conducted a random drug test, and the tenant tested positive. Shortly after, he was fired on the spot. Losing his job meant losing his steady income. Financially ruined, he could no longer afford the mortgage payments on his new house. Forced to sell his home to pay off debts, he soon found himself struggling to survive. Within a short time, the man who thought he was outsmarting everyone lost everything due to his own greed and dishonesty. As for OP's father, he walked away with a hard but valuable lesson. Kindness should not be misplaced. Helping others is noble, but not everyone deserves your generosity. Set firm boundaries. If OP's father had enforced the rent payments from the start, things wouldn't have escalated. Lies always have consequences. The tenant thought he could get away with deception, but his actions ultimately destroyed his own future. This story perfectly illustrates the saying, "You reap what you sow." Key takeaways from this story. 1. Don't let kindness be exploited. Helping others is admirable, but when someone repeatedly avoids responsibility with excuses, it's no longer kindness, it's being taken advantage of. The landlord gave his tenant a fair chance, yet the tenant had no intention of paying rent. 2. Lies don't erase consequences. The tenant blamed the house for his child's illness to justify his actions, but in the end, the truth came to light. Deception may work temporarily, but reality always catches up. 3. Unethical choices can destroy your future. Using illegal substances in a rental property not only ruined the tenant's reputation but also led to job loss, financial ruin, and the eventual sale of his new home. A single bad decision can trigger a chain reaction of serious consequences. 4. Truth will always prevail. People who manipulate and deceive may think they can escape judgment, but sooner or later, the truth surfaces. The tenant believed he outsmarted the landlord, but ultimately, his own actions exposed him. This story serves as a powerful reminder that living with honesty and responsibility is the only sustainable path to success. Story 2, The Tenant Who Exploited the System. OP recounts the story of their parents, former homeowners who decided to rent out an old house to earn extra income. Wanting to help those in need of a home, they agreed to rent to a woman named Karen. At first, Karen made a good impression, presenting herself as a devoted mother caring for 10 foster children. Her story touched OP's parents, making them believe they were helping a responsible caregiver provide for less fortunate children. But it didn't take long for them to realize they had made a huge mistake. The nightmare begins. As soon as Karen moved in, her true nature started to show. The house deteriorated rapidly, and within just a few months, OP's parents barely recognized their own property. Small blue diamond walls covered in scribbles, crayon marks, ink stains, and other unidentifiable messes. Small blue diamond floors scratched and peeling, clear signs of furniture being dragged and overuse. Small blue diamond plumbing issues and electrical failures, leading to skyrocketing repair costs. Small blue diamond trash piled up everywhere, making the house smell moldy, unpleasant, and completely unsuitable for raising children. However, when OP's parents asked Karen to make repairs or at least contribute to maintenance costs, she flat out refused, and even blamed them instead. Instead of taking responsibility for the home, Karen demanded that the landlords fix everything for free. She justified this by saying she was a single caretaker for 10 children and had neither the time nor money to contribute. The rent payment excuses. But the problems didn't stop there. Karen also stopped paying rent on time. Pushpin, she constantly delayed payments, making false promises that never materialized. Pushpin, she blamed the government for late foster care subsidies or complained about the high cost of raising children. Pushpin, every time OP's parents brought up rent, Karen played the victim, using guilt to dodge responsibility. Whenever confronted about unpaid rent, she'd argue. Backhand index pointing right, I'm doing a good thing for these children, why are you asking me for money? Despite their patience and understanding, OP's parents couldn't tolerate the situation any longer. The breaking point, legal action and CPS investigation. After months of being taken advantage of, OP's mother decided to take action. Pushpin, she hired a lawyer to begin eviction proceedings and seek compensation for property damages. Pushpin, more importantly, she reported Karen to Child Protective Services, CPS, after discovering the terrible living conditions the children were subjected to. CPS quickly launched an investigation, and what they found was even worse than OP's parents had imagined. Karen wasn't truly taking care of the children. She fostered multiple kids not out of love, but to collect government benefits. The children were neglected, living in filth with insufficient food and clothing. Karen, who once seemed like a selfless mother, was exposed as a greedy manipulator, using vulnerable children as a source of income. Justice is served. When the court case unfolded, OP's parents won decisively. Balance scale, Karen was ordered to pay for property damages, though she had little to no means to do so. Balance scale CPS revoked her foster care rights, placing the children in safe, loving families. Balance scale, her food truck business license was revoked due to serious legal violations. The downfall of a manipulator. In just a short time, Karen, who thought she could exploit the system for profit, lost everything: her money, her job, and her reputation. Lessons learned. Keycap 1: kindness must be paired with caution. OP's parents believed they were helping a struggling foster mother, but in reality, Karen was exploiting their generosity. This teaches us that helping others is noble, but it must be done with limits and safeguards, especially when it involves property and finances. Keycap 2. Irresponsibility always leads to consequences. Karen destroyed the home, refused to maintain it, and abused the foster care system for personal gain. But in the end, her own actions led to her downfall, losing both her foster children and her business. Those who manipulate others for personal gain will eventually face the consequences. Keycap 3. Legal action is necessary to protect your rights. If OP's parents hadn't taken Karen to court and reported her to CPS, they would have suffered more financial loss and allowed her to continue exploiting others. This highlights why standing up for yourself legally is essential when dealing with injustice. Keycap 4. Exploiting generosity never ends well. Karen believed she could continue manipulating people indefinitely, but in the end, her greed and selfishness ruined her life. This serves as a powerful reminder that those who abuse kindness for personal gain will ultimately face the consequences of their actions. Final takeaway. This story proves that taking advantage of others' generosity and gaming the system is never sustainable. Once the truth is exposed, those who exploit kindness will pay a heavy price. Story 3. The entitled tenants and malicious compliance. OP is a small-scale landlord, owning only a few rental units. Wanting a stable source of income, he always strives to maintain good relationships with tenants and ensure everything runs smoothly. However, it's not always easy, especially when he encounters an entitled couple who treat renting as a free pass to do whatever they please, regardless of the lease agreement. From the moment they moved in, this couple showed complete disregard for the rules. The lease clearly stated the maximum number of occupants, yet they allowed relatives to stay long-term without informing OP. Not only that, they secretly kept pets, despite the lease requiring prior registration and a pet fee. Violations from the start. Exceeding the allowed number of residents, they let relatives move in without notice, as if it were their unquestioned right. Unauthorized pets, they secretly kept dogs and cats, ignoring the registration and fees required in the lease. When OP discovered these violations, he didn't immediately escalate the situation. Instead, he took a diplomatic approach, sending formal warnings in the hope that they would correct their behavior. However, rather than cooperating, the couple completely ignored him and continued acting as if they were entitled to do whatever they wanted. Not only did they violate the lease, but they also constantly made unreasonable complaints to make OP's life difficult. OP scheduled property viewings since their lease was nearing its end, completely legal. Yet, the couple immediately objected. "We feel harassed. We have a right to absolute privacy." They complained about OP's child being near the property, despite it being OP's own property. "Why is your kid here? That's annoying." These complaints were not just unreasonable, they were outright ridiculous. OP realized that if he continued to be lenient, they would only push further. It was time for decisive action. Malicious compliance, a legal but firm response. Seeing that the couple had no intention of cooperating, OP decided to respond legally but strictly, by engaging in malicious compliance, enforcing the lease agreement to the letter and letting them set themselves up for failure. Step 1. Send a formal notice of violations. Occupancy violation, extra residence without notification. Pet policy violation, unauthorized pets without registration. A warning of consequences if not addressed immediately. Step 2. Issue a deadline for correction. If they failed to fix the violations, they would face eviction proceedings according to legal procedures. Step 3. When they ignored the warnings, OP served them a 5-day eviction notice. No more negotiations, the law was on OP's side. The couple still refused to accept reality and decided to take the matter to court, confident they could win against OP. "We paid rent. We have the right to do whatever we want." But they quickly learned that a lease agreement is not something to be taken lightly. The court ruled in OP's favor, as the lease clearly outlined the terms they had deliberately violated. Not only were they forced to vacate immediately, but they were also ordered to pay damages for contract violations and cover legal fees. From trying to game the system, they ended up losing everything, their home and a significant amount of money. The lessons learned. A lease agreement is not optional. It exists to protect both parties, and anyone who violates it will face consequences. Paying rent doesn't grant unlimited rights. Tenants must respect the rules and cannot treat someone else's property as their own. Malicious compliance is a powerful tool. Sometimes, the best response is to strictly follow the rules, allowing the other party to bring about their own downfall. The law prevails. This couple thought they could control the situation, but in the end, the law controlled them. This story is a perfect reminder that entitled behavior and rule-breaking will eventually backfire, especially when dealing with a landlord who knows how to handle things by the book. Story 4. The OP is a small-scale landlord trying to rent out an apartment for a stable source of income. Hoping to find a reliable tenant, he carefully screens applicants and finally selects someone with a stable job, polite demeanor, and no apparent red flags. Everything starts off smoothly. The lease is signed, rent is paid on time, and there are no complaints from neighbors. OP breathes a sigh of relief, thinking he has found the perfect tenant. But he has no idea that this is just the calm before the storm. A seemingly harmless decision is about to turn into a nightmare. A few months later, everything starts to change. The tenant suddenly stops paying rent without any clear explanation. When OP reaches out to remind him, the tenant always comes up with excuses to delay payment. "I just lost my job, I'll pay next week. I'm having some financial difficulties, please give me more time. I already transferred the money, maybe the bank is processing it slowly, I'll check again." At first, OP remains patient. He sends gentle reminders, believing this is just a temporary setback. But soon, the tenant completely cuts off contact. Calls and messages go unanswered. Worried about the condition of the apartment, OP decides to check it out in person. As soon as he opens the door, a horrifying scene unfolds before him. The apartment is no longer a livable space, it has turned into a massive garbage dump. Trash, old items, cardboard boxes, and plastic bottles are scattered everywhere. Piles of junk are stacked so high that it's almost impossible to move around. A revolting stench fills the air, coming from rotting food and moldy leftovers. And that's not the worst of it, serious damage has been done to the plumbing system. It seems the tenant had broken the pipes, causing wastewater to flood the floors, spreading mold and destroying the hardwood flooring. Neighbors had already started complaining about the overwhelming stench coming from the apartment, but OP had no idea what was happening inside. And to make matters worse, many valuable items were missing. The fridge, washing machine, microwave, all the appliances OP had provided were gone. Some pieces of furniture had vanished without a trace. Upon further inspection, OP realizes that the damage is so severe that local authorities declare the apartment uninhabitable. He is forced to shut it down for repairs. The cost of fixing the damage? Over $50,000. Unable to rent it out for a long time, OP loses his source of income. Now stuck with a severely damaged property and a huge financial burden, OP faces extreme hardship. Fortunately, insurance covers part of the costs. But the claims process is anything but easy. The procedure drags on for months, requiring extensive evidence, photos of the damage, official reports, and detailed repair invoices. Financial pressure builds up, as OP still has to pay property taxes and maintenance fees while earning nothing from the apartment. After much time, effort, and money, OP finally restores the property. But the experience leaves a deep scar on his journey as a landlord. A hard lesson learned. This story serves as a serious warning about the risks of renting out property. Not everyone is trustworthy. Someone who seems good at first might not be a safe choice. The damage can be worse than you imagine. A careless tenant can cause tens of thousands of dollars in losses within months. Always screen tenants thoroughly. Check their credit history, verify employment, and get feedback from previous landlords. Monitor the property regularly. Don't wait until it's too late. If a tenant is avoiding you, something could be wrong. Get landlord insurance. It can be a lifesaver in worst-case scenarios. When it comes to renting out property, you can never be too careful. One mistake can cost you tens of thousands of dollars and throw you into a nightmare with no end in sight. Story 5. OP is a responsible landlord who owns a 2-story apartment. To help cover living and maintenance costs, she rents out the lower floor at an extremely affordable rate, just $500 per month, far below market price. Not only that, but OP doesn't charge tenants any maintenance fees. She pays out of pocket for all repairs, plumbing, electrical systems, and basic upkeep. Her goal is simple: to provide tenants with a comfortable home without burdening them with extra costs. She's not doing it for profit. She's doing it for fairness. But not everyone sees it that way. One day, OP casually mentions her rental situation to her boyfriend, thinking it's just a normal conversation. But his reaction leaves her stunned. "You're profiting off someone else. You're exploiting them." Her boyfriend accuses her of being greedy, of taking advantage of someone's struggles. In his view, anyone who collects rent from another person is a bad person. But that's not even the worst part. After calling OP a greedy landlord, he demands half of the rent money every month, claiming, when two people are in love, they should share everything. OP is completely shocked by the absurdity of this demand. She calmly explains that the apartment is her property, the rent only helps cover some of the costs, and she's actually losing money by paying for repairs herself. But he doesn't want to listen. He stubbornly insists that OP is exploiting others, no matter how unreasonable that sounds. And that's the moment OP realizes the truth. This is a man who doesn't respect her efforts and property. A man who contributes nothing but still wants a share of what she earns. A man who is willing to twist reality just to take advantage of her hard work. Did she really want to be with someone like this? Someone who doesn't understand financial responsibility? Someone who only criticizes but refuses to acknowledge reality? Someone who expects benefits without effort? The answer was crystal clear, and oh. Without hesitation, OP ends the relationship immediately. She doesn't need to explain further. She doesn't need to convince someone who refuses to listen. She doesn't want to waste her time on someone who doesn't deserve it. And guess what? He gets angry. He begs for another chance, saying he didn't mean it and that she shouldn't take it seriously. But for OP, it's too late. She has seen his true nature. She understands her worth isn't defined by his ridiculous accusations. And most importantly, she never wants to be with someone like that again. A priceless lesson. No one has the right to demand a share of your hard work if they haven't contributed. Financial responsibility is crucial in any relationship. If someone doesn't understand money, they will become a burden, not a partner. If someone doesn't respect your value, they don't deserve to be in your life. Love doesn't mean sharing everything unconditionally. It requires mutual respect, understanding, and fairness. OP dodged a bullet, and she has zero regrets. Whether in property rental or personal relationships, one rule always applies. Respect and responsibility are key. These stories aren't just isolated incidents, they serve as warnings about the risks of dealing with people who fail to appreciate kindness, refuse to respect rules, and seek to exploit others. As a landlord, set clear boundaries, enforce contracts strictly, and never let kindness be mistaken for weakness. A lease isn't just paperwork, it's protection. In love and relationships, if someone doesn't respect your worth, doesn't contribute, but only demands more, they don't belong in your life. Don't be afraid to walk away from toxic relationships to protect yourself and build a better future. Kindness is valuable, but it should be given to those who deserve it. Know when to be patient, when to be firm, and most importantly, never let anyone define your worth except yourself.